Hola. Bienvenidos. ¿Cómo está? Unfortunately, that's all the Spanish I know, so I'll have to stop there. How many here are native Spanish speakers? All right. Better? All right, so I will speak in English, but I'll put the slides in Spanish. Is that okay? All right, very good. All right, so I'd like to welcome you to Designing for Trusted Confidence. And just to introduce myself a little bit more, as we discussed, I was on the Windows Server team and also the Windows Vista and the Windows 7 teams while at Microsoft. In case it matters, I do want to point out I was not on the Windows 8 team. I can't explain it. But one thing I do want to point out about my work at Microsoft, and it's the reason I'm presenting this to you today, is that Microsoft had the Secure Soft Computing Initiative in 2002, where they literally shut the company down for 2 weeks because of the Nimda and code red and the various security problems that they were having. And so they assembled a variety of teams to work on a variety of issues. And since I was the user interface program manager for security UI on Windows Server, I was responsible for some work in designing guidelines for trust with respect to security and privacy. So I worked on these guidelines and I worked on a training course. It was very successful. But the one thing I realized was that security and designing for trust and confidence applies pretty much to all UI. It's not just about security, it's not just about privacy. It really applies to everything. So what I'm going to present to you today is kind of my broader thinking about what we can do to inspire confidence and trust for users. So I do want to point out that I have a new book. It's called UI is Communication, and what we're going to do is we're going to give away a free copy at the end, and we're going to give it to the person who asks the best question. So let's make sure that we ask some good questions at the end. So my agenda today, so I want to just talk about two topics here. First of all, I do want to talk about the motivation and why this is important, but I also want to talk about earning trust and also building confidence. And so let's start with the motivation. Why do we care about this? Well, usually what we tend to do in UI a lot is focus on mechanical solutions. Kind of like the ability to get tasks done in our UI. But users need other things, right? They need to know what they can do, so is it useful? They need to know if it will do what they want, so is it usable? And we need to know if it's done what users want, and have they done the task correctly? So we need other things above and beyond the mechanical ability to get tasks done. And you're probably familiar with the useful, usable, desirable idea, and also Maslow's pyramid of needs. And so the interesting thing is at the bottom of the pyramid, of the pyramid here is more focused on useful. Can it do something useful? Does it have mechanical usability? The middle of the pyramid is more about usable. Can users actually get tasks done? That sort of thing. But the top of the pyramid, these are things that we very often don't think about. We don't think about making the experience fun or engaging or personal. We don't think about making it trustworthy or inspiring confidence. So that's what I want to address today. One observation I want to make is that we should not take the user's trust for confidence. We do this all the time. We assume that users trust us, but they don't. We have to earn that trust. We have to go out of our way to earn it. And if we don't earn that trust, nothing else matters because people won't trust our software. They won't. So I just want to give you a very simple example. Let's suppose you're visiting an unfamiliar city. Let's say you're a visitor to Buenos Aires, and you ask someone for directions. So think about how that works. You actually are doing kind of two things when you ask for directions. You're paying attention to the directions, what is the person telling you, but you're also assessing whether or not that person is credible. Do they really know what they're talking about? And if you decide at some point that they don't know what they're talking about, you're probably going to be very polite, you'll nod your head, but at that point you're going to stop paying attention because you just don't care. You don't trust the directions because the person doesn't know what they're talking about. And so you don't care what their response is. And I think software is very similar to that. If we don't trust it, we won't use it. So when I was on the Windows team, there was a guy named Hillel Cooperman, and he used to like to ask the question, what would you rather do with your photo collection? Would you rather store it on a Windows computer or store your photo collection in a gasoline-soaked cardboard box? And the interesting thing about that question is it's a good question. You actually have to think about it. It's like, well, you know, as long as nobody has a match, my photos are going to be there tomorrow if I put them in a gasoline-soaked cardboard box. However, on my Windows computer, who knows? I don't know about you, but personally, I did lose my photo collection once on my computer. It's gone. Where did it go? I have no idea. I think it was a sync. It's either Apple or Zoom, probably. One of these sync things decided I didn't want my photos anymore, and I just removed them. I was surprised. Unfortunately, I had them backed up, so it wasn't a problem. All right, so what I want to suggest here is if you have a product or a feature that you think is really, really well designed, but people aren't using it the way you expect them to, there's a very good chance that perhaps they don't trust it enough or they don't have enough confidence. So that's what this is important. Don't trust the product. A gasoline-soaked cardboard box actually looks good. All right, so let's talk a little bit about trust. This is something we have to earn. Our definition of trust is that trust is a relationship that is earned by consistently demonstrating competent, open, respectful, honest behavior where someone is willing to rely upon or take risks with something or someone. So stress the key things. This is something we have to earn. We have to earn it by the way in which we do our tasks so that people feel good about us and we're willing to take risks with us. If we fail to do that, we've got a problem. So why do you care? Well, trust is required for a lot of tasks. It's surprising how many tasks there are that require trust. And if we don't have that trust, people won't perform the task. Nothing else really matters. So we have to earn it. We have to, earning it in one area does not necessarily mean that we've earned it in other areas. So for example, I might trust you to mow my lawn. That does not necessarily mean I trust you to take care of your kids. A different amount of trust is required. The more competence required to do a task, the more trust is required. You have to earn. If you're going to manage my finances, I have to really trust you. That's a very important thing. And of course, we should never take this for granted. So I want to suggest that every task potentially requires trust. And so to give you an idea of this, I wanted to come up with the simplest idea, the simplest UI that requires trust. And here it is. So this is the print options dialog, of course. So the idea is I'm going to print the document. But very often I'm in a situation where I want to print the current page of my current document. I want to print the current page. So a lot of UIs look like this, and notice there's a current page option here. One thing I noticed though is that I never use this option. I never use it. Why do you suppose that is? Like crazy, or is there something going on here? Why do you suppose I don't use it? No, I want to print the current page. I want to print the current page. Okay. Right. Exactly. I have to trust that in this case Windows thinks that the current page is the same page that I think the current page is. And if it's wrong, I'm going to be upset. Exactly. Both literally and figuratively. Very good. However, I do notice there are other UIs where I use that feature all the time. I've got the ability to print the current page and I use it just fine. Don't even give it a second thought. Why do you suppose that is? Because I can see the page. Here it is, right? So, I don't consider this some fancy preview feature. I consider this to be a feature that earns the user's trust. I can trust this. I know what I'm going to get. I'm going to be satisfied with the result. Here, it's taking my trust for granted. Now, what's at stake here? A single piece of paper, maybe a minute of my time, not that big of a deal. So let's look at another example that's a little bit more significant. How about carbon monoxide detectors or smoke detectors? Now, it happens in my house. I've got built-in carbon monoxide detectors, and it turns out that when the detector goes off because there's carbon monoxide, it sounds exactly the same as when it has low battery. Right? So now let's work this through with a scenario. So let's say we're in bed. It's usually like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. when these things go off, right? So it's 4 a.m., this thing goes off. What do we do? Do we run out of the house and call the fire department at 3 a.m. to make sure that there really is no problem with carbon monoxide? Or do we say, oh, maybe it's the battery and we go back to sleep? Risking the possibility of waking up dead. Right? How do we know? This is a big deal, right? So I notice that this design here does not earn my trust because I have no idea if it's a false alarm or a real alarm. However, note this this feedback here, this LCD display that's telling me the level of carbon monoxide enables me to earn the trust, right? If I see a number in there, I'm going, oh crap, let's get out, we've got a problem. Again, earning trust versus taking it. All right, so, let's see. So, trust requires confidence. If we don't look confident, we're not going to earn that trust. So let's say we've got this particular device. So we've got an iPhone and it's telling us 20% of our battery is remaining. How much battery do you suppose is remaining? Not a trick question. It's probably around 20%. I mean, the amazing thing on the iPhone is if you have 1%, you still have time. You can actually get something done. All right, how about this? Windows is telling us that 21 minutes or 10% of our battery is remaining. How much battery is remaining?
5 minutes.
Not 21 minutes or 10%. You gotta go and you gotta get your recharger right now. This is shut down, right? So which one is trustworthy? Which one is not? What is the least trustworthy feature in the iPhone? At least my personal opinion. What do you suppose what I think is?
Signal.
Pardon? Signal, perhaps. Well, I'm thinking about the spell correction. All right, so here's an example. Do you want to go to Zimbabwe today? When I say Zimbabwe, I actually means stupid phone. So there's whole websites with stupid error corrections. Here's another one. I'm lesbian errors. All right, so here's a situation where I'm trying to print something and my network printer shows up as offline, and I happen to be using Windows. And so here's what I see on the screen. So remember, trust requires confidence. So let's see, I've got a state that seems to be good. I've got a warning, and I've got an error. So I get to choose which one of those I believe. Is it a warning, is it an error, is it Then I run the troubleshooter, and it says to contact my network administrator. So I'm doing this at home. As it happens, I am my network administrator. So I contacted myself, and I didn't go. And then I go to the help. So here's the help. So I'm looking for network printer offline. Look at the various help topics. I can access files and printers. Understanding networking drivers, show files. Is this helpful? Does this earn your trust? Do you feel like Windows is going to help you solve this problem? There's nothing here to build our trust, is there? This is pretty simple. All right, so these are things that earn our trust. So we want to have confidence in the reputation of our counterparty, so who we're working with, will we trust that counterparty? We have confidence in the task, things that we're doing. How about the task options and defaults? Sometimes we see defaults that don't look like they're good for us, that looks like they're good for somebody else. That does not earn our trust. We want to have control over the terms. We want to have control over privacy, security. We want to make sure that we don't lose anything, that we don't embarrass. Things like clarity, transparency, and feedback go very long way in order to achieve this. All right, so here's a real UI from Windows Vista. So they're asking us if we'd like to join the Windows Computer Experience Improvement Program. What do you think? Trustworthy? Why not? What is it about this that doesn't look quite good?
The OK button.
Okay. So if you're like me, the thing you're probably reacting to is this. That OK button is disabled, right? What's going on? So I told this joke in Europe, nobody laughed, but it's like a Russian election, right? You know, are you voting for Putin now? Or are you voting for Putin later? It doesn't really look like we have a choice, does it? So what's going on here? What's going on here actually includes this little shield. Does that mean anything to anybody? Exactly. So that security shield is telling us that it's going to present the user account prompt, UAC prompt, so it's going to ask us if we really want to do that thing, right? So what's going on here is that they really tried to get rid of as many of those as they possibly could. So as it happens, we are not in the program, and so if we were to click OK, they would present this dialog asking us to say if we really want to make this change when there is no change to make. This is what we already have. So the idea was to disable this, so if you click cancel, you would in fact not be in the program. Who's going to know that, other than the people who designed this feature? Doesn't this look like you're trying to be tricked into something you don't want to do, right? That's what it looks like. This does not earn our trust. Even though it's not malicious and there's not bad intention here, it doesn't look that way, does it? All right, how about this? So I talked about photos before. So let's say we got a situation where we're importing photos from our camera to our computer, and let's say for the sake of argument, we want to erase the photos after we've done that. What do you think? Is this trustworthy? So would anybody check that? Why not?
You don't know what you're erasing.
Right, so if Windows isn't smart enough to know how much battery it has, or the reason why a printer is offline, what's going to make us think that if there's any kind of problem, that it won't do some stupid thing and erase our photos without copying, right? Right? Isn't that possible? So I want to see something like, don't worry, we won't erase any files until we verify that it's been successfully copied. Some hopefully short of that, but that's what I want to see in order to have copies. This takes it for granted, doesn't it? Of course, it's going to work just fine, isn't it? Right. So these are things that lose users' trust. Of course, the opposite of those things that I just talked about, things like surprises, bad deals, not keeping promises, inappropriate use of our personal information, perception of change after the deal is done, satisfaction not guaranteed, complexity, complex legal statements. We'll give a few examples. So, satisfaction guarantee. I can tell you, if I don't totally have confidence in certain counterparties, having a money-back guarantee really does give me confidence to try a service with somebody I don't know. I feel good about certain companies, Amazon, I don't need this, but for the smaller companies where I don't really have a relationship, this is important, especially if I'm paying a lot of money. All right, does this UI inspire confidence here? So I live in Vermont. Orvis is a Vermont company. I have many Orvis products. I got an email from Orvis saying that they had a special where I could buy a product and get free shipping. All right, so here I am. And this might be hard to read, but it says shipping method 5 to 7 business days for $9.95. So is this trustworthy? What do you suppose I'm going to do? Am I getting free shipping? It sure doesn't look like it, does it? Now note there's a red thing here that says free standard shipping, so it's promising me free shipping, but I don't see free shipping. So the way this is designed, I expect to see free shipping here. I expect to see free, right? That's what I expect to see. As it happens, what I have to do is complete the task and get it all the way to the very end. And at the very end, yes, in fact, I'm getting free shipping. But my question is, who's going to go all the way to the end if we don't have the trust and we're getting the deal we were offering? We're not going to do it, are we? We're going to bail out. It's like, what's going on? Why am I not getting free shipping? All right, so I like to make models for things. So here's my model for trust. So basically, users want to get their work done, they want to achieve their goals. And so what they're doing, as they're doing this, is they're kind of looking for signs, for clues, whether or not you're trustworthy. And so if they see things that look encouraging, everything's good. But once we get to the point where we kind of lack that confidence, we're going to give up. We think, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't do this. All right, so my law of trust is that trust is hard to earn, but it's very easy to lose, and very difficult to get back once it's lost. So let's not lose. All right, it turns out that Google has a fantastic set of principles for trust, so I just wanted to share this very quickly. This looks very familiar at this point. We've covered one thing, but we want to earn trust through good design. I mentioned confidence before, so that's very important. We want designs that are efficient and professional and make actions easily reversible. Transparency is very important. We want to know what we're getting. We don't want to be surprised. And also, of course, Google sells ads and this things with personal information. So that's very important to them. Just a fact that requires trust. All right, here's an example from Amazon that I find interesting. Now, I was trying to figure out if Amazon does business here in Argentina. They do? Okay. So there's not a... Yeah. All right, so here's an interesting example. So basically the deal is I'm asking Amazon to ship a product to a new address, whether I've done this before for this account. So it's asking me to enter my full credit card number. And they have this why this is safe link here. And what I found interesting about this is that I felt very reassured by the fact that they were willing to answer that question. I didn't even actually prove it, just the fact that they were willing to tell me why it was safe, and it gave me that assurance that it was safe. So I liked it. All right, I want to talk a little bit about confidence. So confidence is a little bit different than trust. I'm defining it as an emotion that we have. So what is confidence? Well, it's a feeling that users have when they believe they're doing the right thing and that their goals are being satisfied. So a good question to ask is, well, what exactly is the difference? Now in English, trust and confidence are kind of synonyms, and kind of come from the same Latin root, which is confidedo, it kind of means the same thing. But I'm drawing a distinction between the two. In Spanish, in my deck I'm using credibilidad and confidence. So I'm using slightly different words here, but the difference to me is trust is how I feel about you. Confidence is how I feel about you. Am I able to do the task? That's confidence. I need to build my confidence so I feel good about it. Whereas by contrast, trust is how I feel about the counterpart. So I'm defining these to be different things. So when we talked about trust previously, I want to talk about confidence. Yeah. All right, so things that build confidence. So we want to be able to have confidence that we know what we're going to get, and we're going to get it. We want to make sure that we're in the right place. Very often in UI, we're like trying to get something done. We don't even know if we're on the right screen. I want you to build my confidence that I'm in the right place. Let's not take that for granted. All right, I want to make informed, appropriate decisions. So you're asking me a question. Give me the information I need in order to make a good decision. Don't just give me the answers. Help me choose. Give me the information I need to build my confidence in my choice. Let's see. I want to have the terms I want. I want it to be very easy to fix mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. If I make a mistake, are you going to punish me, spank me for doing it wrong, or are you going to help me get back on track? I want to make sure that we can clearly, easily do all the above, and let's not take confidence for granted. All right, so let's look at an example. My favorite examples for this. Let's say I've got a very early meeting or maybe a very early flight, and I want to set an alarm using my phone. Right? How many ways can I screw that up? Screw up translates well in Spanish. Yeah, how many? So give me a couple. Okay, very good. AM to PM. What else? Oh, no, that's a great one. Right, low battery or maybe the volume off. That's a good one too. Yeah.
Wrong day?
Wrong day. Yes, very good. Okay, very good. All right, so let's say I want to get up very early tomorrow at 6 at least for me. So 10 a.m. tomorrow. All right, is this right? Everybody right? I made a couple mistakes. All right, how about here? So this is on my Android phone. Did I get it right? How about here? Did I get it right? No, I didn't. Did you see the difference between the two? Isn't it obvious? It's very easy to make a mistake with the iOS phone, right? If you're like me, you've probably put PM instead of AM by accident because it's so easy to touch that accidentally, right? It's very easy to miss the day of the week. Whereas by contrast, this extra feedback builds my confidence. So I've got the background, and I also have this bit here. It's telling me when the alarm is going to go off. I can easily look at that and say, wait a minute, that's not right. Whereas by contrast, in the iOS one, I have to like double check it, triple check it, is this real right? I'm not totally sure. Right, so this one builds my confidence. I like it. Right, let's look at calculators. Is this the right answer? Not totally sure. How about this? Is this the right answer? Yeah, it is. I can look at the input. Yes, this is in fact the calculation I expected to do. That's the right answer. So having that information, again, builds my confidence. I can trust the results of this one. This one I have to double check. All right, so in the U.S. we have StubHub. Do you have StubHub? Interesting. So maybe this is to buy tickets for concerts, sporting events. Oh yeah, right. Okay, so similar sort of thing. So one thing I found, I don't buy a lot of tickets from StubHub, but I've done it a couple of times, and what I find interesting about it is how far they go out of their way to build your confidence. Everything about their design is about building confidence. So among the things they do is that when you're choosing seats, they give you a preview of what it is you're going to see from that seat. So you have a good seat? Well, I guess. But that is how, I will not be surprised, I will not be disappointed because they're building my confidence. You're going to do this. And if you look at StubHub, the way it's designed, it's just all about that. You're going to enjoy the event you're going to get a good deal, you're going to get exactly what you expect. You do everything you possibly can to build your confidence. Yes, you're going to like what you're doing. Right, so I travel a lot. I look for this sort of thing with flights. So is this building my confidence? Do you see any design elements in this particular page that's pointing out, building my confidence, that this is the flight I think I've got? What do you see?
Well, the red indicates some kind of error, right? Something like that.
So we've got this bit here. So the interesting thing is I'm flying to Dublin, but I'm leaving from London. So that's a little bit unusual. They're pointing that out, making sure I really want to do that, right? What else?
+1
Right. So where is that section? So this bit here, and also they give me the arrival date explicitly.
Arriving very fast.
Yes. Right. So this plus this builds my confidence. I'm not going to be surprised when I arrive. A small detail I'll share with you right off the bat, though, is they do give the day of the week. When I'm looking at reservations, I really want to see that. You know, what day am I flying out? Friday? Okay, that's the right day. It doesn't have the Friday. I have to look it up in the calendar. Right? Little details like that. Is there any others?
Here,
Which one?
red where it says that is depart from.
Yeah. Right. So we're not departing from Dublin. We're from Heathrow. Okay, very good. So total time, and then also the breakdowns, and also the layover. So I don't want the layover to be too short. I don't want it to be too long. So that helps. And just one more, best price guarantee. That's nice. So these little details really build my confidence. Yes, I can buy this ticket. This is the thing I need to do. I like it. All right, so things that build confidence. Well, I think we just talked about with trust, but also other things. All right, we want to make sure that the tasks are well explained, easy to understand. We want to make sure we're making informed decisions. Good defaults help a lot when we're making informed decisions. Because if I know what most people like or what I'm most likely going to want, then it really, really helps me. Good feedback, clear feedback, transparency. Redundant help, we saw that with the alarm, so that little bit of redundancy goes a long way, really going to help my confidence level. And also allowing users to control what they do. So I think Google has some interesting guidelines here. One of my favorite guidelines from Google is decide for me, but let me have the final say. I like that. So what they try to do is they try to do the right thing for you automatically. If you don't like it, you can easily get out of it. I like that. So they'll show things like, okay, we're swiping here, so I'm going to delete that item. We haven't really do it. So here we have a situation where it's probably an NFC type situation. So you really want to meme something, well, they're going to ask me if I really do it. Very good. So how do we need forgiveness. All right, so users make small mistakes all the time. Believe it or not, we're constantly making little tiny mistakes. So what happens when we make a small mistake? Well, of course, the best solution is to prevent the problem in the first place. A lot of well-designed developers do that. Next best thing is to help users find the problem, make it easy to correct. The worst thing is to make it hard to find the problem, and make it's not the worst, the second worst is make it hard to find the problem and have users start completely over. Now, this is something I'm very sensitive to. You'd be amazed how often you have to start completely over whenever you do a task incorrectly. You make a tiny mistake, you have to start completely over. This happens all the time. We do this all the time. I don't like that. The worst thing we could possibly do, though, of course, is make users regret using the product. So let's look at a few examples of forgiveness. So I find that the experience in signing into a website or some sort of app is usually horrible. very poorly designed, and that we don't really put a tremendous amount of thought into it. So here we have a situation where I entered in my credentials incorrectly, maybe my username is wrong, maybe my password is wrong. What specifically did I get wrong? No idea whatsoever, right? So I have different usernames that I use for personal versus business. Maybe I type my password in wrong. I could just have the wrong account name. Maybe I have a typo. I don't know. But the fact that they cleared it on error means I have to start completely over, and I have no idea what I did wrong the first time I do it. No idea at all. And this is especially bad on mobile, because quite frankly, the last thing I want to do on a mobile phone or tablet is type this crap over and over and over again. Just leave it there. Let me fix it, please. All right, here's a good example. So what's interesting here is that there's a lot of situations where, like Amazon, I use Amazon all the time. I know that I've got an account. I know my password. Some websites, I'm not totally sure. In fact, I used Ticketmaster the other day. I don't know if I got an account with those guys. So the interesting thing is I see that better designed websites, they don't assume that you know. So if you try to log in and you don't have an account, they'll have you create an account. By contrast, if you're trying to create an account, you already have one, rather than making you start over, they'll log you in. It's very nice. It's not assumed that users know the credentials for you. Here I'm trying to make a travel reservation, and I believe what happened is I got my daughter's age wrong. And this is like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with that at the airport, so I have to go back and fix it. When they say new search, they mean new search. You have to start completely over. It's horrible. By contrast, I see Expedia, they're making it very, very easy to correct small problems. I like that. It's much better. All right, I think it's very important to have a confident, encouraging tone. It's not just the mechanics of it, it's how we feel about it. It's very much an emotional reaction to what it is we're doing. So we want to have good language. Google has the guideline of sprinkle encouragement. Again, I really like that. Sprinkle encouragement. Let's encourage our users to get a task done. And this is important to do, especially with error messages. You might have noticed that the error message language that we use is usually very harsh. We use words like error, failure, illegal, abort, kill, terminate, catastrophic, and fatal. Why do we do this? Is it really necessary to use that language? Does that inspire me? Does that make me feel confident? I don't think so. Oh, sorry. All right, so here's a situation where I'm using a product from HP to back up my hard disk. Is this encouraging? This is sprinkling encouragement. So what's going on here, by the way, is I know exactly what's going on here because I know this stuff. But it turns out that it's failing on Outlook. So Outlook has this OST file thing that is always open, and so when it tries to copy, it just can't deal with it. So I've got one file that did not copy and is never going to copy unless I shut down Outlook. Nevertheless, how do you think this makes you feel when you see this? Yeah, it didn't work, did it? Failure. It's failure. Yeah, you like those Christmas. Very good. So how about this one? So here I'm ordering a product on Staples, and I've got a little small mistake. I did not provide any time phone. Expires confidence. So, I don't think so, right? So this is not a confidence inspiring. So we got this cultish, satanic, biohazard icon. We've got a big red error. Just to make sure it's clear, we've made some sort of horrible mistake. Right? It really kind of overemphasizes a very small problem. It doesn't make us feel like we're confident. All right. So, does anyone use personas? Yes, okay, very good. So if you're using personas and you've got a situation that requires trust or confidence, I think there's something to be said for putting that into persona. So let's say we're coming up with, let's say, a persona for someone who's thinking about making a travel reservation. Things I'd like to know is what would discourage that user from completing the task even if they did it correctly. And let's go out of our way to design for that. Put those elements in the persona so we know what that person is looking for. So some things we might have is, let's have that day of the week, or if we have the unusual reservation like we looked at before, 24-hour cancellation policy is very, very good to have. That having the lowest price fare kind of builds my confidence that I've chosen a given flight. There might be kind of like hidden things like baggage or fees for seats, that sort of thing, making that obvious so I can discover that after it's too late. Cancellation or change policy, make that obvious before purchase. Those are things we might want to design into our product so that that person has confidence that they're actually going to complete the task rather than being unconfident and bailing out before they make the purchase. So let's actually put some thought into that into our personas. I think we'll make better personas. All right, so the thing I want to remind you is that many tasks require trust and confidence. Trust is a relationship that we have to earn. By contrast, confidence is more of an emotion where we believe we're doing the right thing for ourselves. We should take neither of these for granted. We have to earn these. We have to make sure that we have design elements that people feel good about what it is they're doing. I've got a few resources here if you're interested in this. A friend of mine is Chris Goddard. He wrote People by Design. I think it's a fantastic book. I read it in case you're interested, but that's an excellent resource. A few others, Persuasive Technology, Selective Interaction, The Secrets of Science and Persuasion, and seven principles to make your website resources. And I just wanted to give a quick blurb about me. So, UX design. So again, I do training and consulting services primarily to software teams that don't have sufficient design talent. I would be happy if you're in a situation where you'd like to get some feedback on the design. I would do the same thing. I do a lot. I got my contact information here. If you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to do that. Also, love to get in touch if you'd like to connect with LinkedIn. Feel free to do that. Right, so, questions. So here's the thing, we've got something very important on the line here. So we've got a free book here, so.
No pressure, right?
Yeah, no pressure. So, and I'm not the judge, by the way. I'm not going to be the judge here, but I want good questions, so what do you got?
I want to see hands.
How can you measure the trust, or how can you know that the issue in one UI is a trust and not some other issue? How can you measure that?
So, yeah, so there's, try to separate that into two questions. So, how do we know? Well, one thing that's kind of obvious is that, let's say we have an airline reservation site. Someone goes through several steps to make a reservation. They get just to the point where you need to finish the confirmation, finish, and they don't do it. That's telling us something. So they might be shopping. So shopping, people shop all the time, but when we do all the things required to complete the purchase and we don't complete the purchase, that is a very strong suggestion that people are not feeling confident or trustworthy about what it is they're doing. Specifically how to measure, that's a very challenging thing to do. You could try to do it through like customer satisfaction surveys and that sort of thing, but the problem is there are many things that lead to either satisfaction or dissatisfaction, so it's very hard to be sure about this issue specifically. So what my personal preference is just be aware that it's an issue and try to look for those things that we expect our users to be looking for and make sure we design those in. Because if they're not there, we've got a problem. We should just assume
Hi. That's interesting talk. Do you have an opposite case? So you've shown us a lot of examples where trust isn't built. And in a way, there's things we perhaps even shouldn't trust because they're so badly done. Do you have a case or an example where the trust is fake? So it feels like people, I trust in that, and I do something, and actually it kind of pulls a fast one on me, like bait and switch later on.
Yeah,
because that's kind of almost not worse.
We refer to the sorry.
Well, that's almost worse than.
Yes, that's true, right? So I refer to those, and other people refer to those as dark patterns. And you might be familiar with, I think it's Harry. Is it Harry or Harvey? Harry Britnell, British guy. So he's got a website called darkpatterns.org, and also Evil by Design, which is Chris Goddard book. So he gives examples, both Chris Goddard and Britnell give examples of situations where they're designed specifically to mislead people, to, let's say, have them do things they don't want to do. So the classic example of that might be writing error, where you accidentally sign up for insurance, travel insurance, when you had no intention whatsoever, just based on which the way in which the UI is designed. So yes, that's something I'm aware of. Actually, I have a second part to this that addresses that, but given only 40 minutes, I haven't covered that. But it's a very interesting issue because we don't want to like abuse people's trust in order to manipulate them to do things they don't want to do. Very good.
Would you trust me? I read and recommend the book. Yeah, really. My question was about credibility and confidence and how you build that based on competence and many times based on consistency. Consistency, especially in behaviors. You emphasize the principles of Google. Can you name any principles that are actually damaging credibility, damaging confidence?
So principles that damage confidence?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have addressed that in one of the slides, and basically my claim was it was kind of the opposite of those things that build trust. So, having, let's say, control over terms would be something that builds trust. Not having control over terms would be something that harms trust. Avoiding surprises would build trust. Being surprised about something you didn't expect doesn't build trust. So it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of the easiest way of looking at it.
I think sometimes when you have too much personalization or too much, maybe you're damaging trust. Even when it's in essence a good principle, good sanctions, maybe a certain product.
Right.
That level of high personalization is affecting trust.
Right.
For example, Facebook provides security.
Yes. Right, exactly. So complexity versus simplicity, transparency versus obscurity, those are very much issues, definitely. So the interesting thing about, I don't know, I haven't looked at Facebook policy lately, but when it was kind of scandalous, it was scandalous because it was very, very complex what it really had. And very much harms trust, absolutely. Yes?
Why do you think there are so many bad error messages? Do you think it might be because of an engineering mindset that because the user is not following the way the system was supposed to work, every error is the same error, not like small errors?
Yeah. So I think there's two obvious explanations. One is that it tends to be programmers that are designing error messages. Right, so they're not really designed from a user experience point of view so much. If you look at your typical UI spec, there's not a lot of error messages that's going into it. But the other is, it's kind of history. We've done it this way, we've always done it this way, we kind of consider it acceptable, right? So if we have, terminate, catastrophic error, abort immediately, we look at that as like, oh, okay, we accept it when we should have a higher bar for how we're writing stuff. But it's just so used to seeing that. Yeah, we're not upset when we see it wrong.
Hi. I may go back to the question that was the first question, but you showed a lot of principles that said like trust in, that could have been replaced with usability of or usability of, right in the beginning of the presentation. And there's a way to measure all that. You also said that being aware of this issue of trust issue should be enough, and that basically there's no way to measure this, or that you could measure it with some very broad
measure. I think it's difficult to measure.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I'm going to make a very straight question: is there a way to measure trust?
Yeah. Very difficult.
That, I won't take that for an answer already.
Well, again, so we can measure things. We have ways of measuring satisfaction, for example. But where does the satisfaction come from? How do we know where it comes from? How do we know specifically that it's trust?
Yes, of course, that's hard to measure. But there's bad ways of measuring trust. I mean, there are like 3 questionnaires that you don't agree with, but something to point us to trying it ourselves. What I get is, okay, there's no way to do it. There should be some way of doing it. it's bad way too.
Okay, fair enough there. Well, I'll tell you what, let's open the question up. Does anyone have any advice that they recommend anyone try to
What
measure
about
trust?
retention? If you have online business, can you take retention as a metric? People coming back next week,
Yes.
next day, next month, as a proxy of fidelity or trust in the way they buy?
Right. And in fact, I agree with that. So I would say that customer retention is certainly an issue. But to tie the dark pattern thing with the retention thing, the interesting thing is, we can do something. Another thing, of course, we measure is conversion, profitability, that sort of thing. So let's say we were to do something that's a dark pattern that gets more business, gets more sales, but has a long-term effect of harming customer retention. The problem is, it's easier to measure the short-term results, which is more money. It's harder to measure the long-term results, which is lost customers. So I would recommend customer retention. Absolutely. If you're losing customers, that's telling you something. But the problem is that's kind of a lagging indicator. It takes a while to get that data, and it might be for a change you made months ago. So the problem, although I agree that's a great thing to measure, there's kind of a lag that's taking it. Okay.
When a user lost trust, it will be really upsetting for him. So I see a lot, for example, of Facebook pages of companies that have lots of users complaining for these trust issues, and that nobody cares. The answers are just, oh, come back and maybe we're going to give you something that is a lot of information that I think companies don't recover, social red, like Facebook and other types of this. They're undervalued, all the things that the users say.
Right. Yeah. And so the interesting thing again is when you lose your customers, it's very difficult to measure that. You can't.
Hi.
Yes.
You've been talking about how to build a virtual system design.
Yes.
But I've got a different problem, but it's about trust and confidence. I've been working on a project that's basically about rebuilding a software that your company has built for a client. And one of the main reasons that this rebuild is important it's because users don't have trust in current software. So these projects started with users not trusting that we are capable to build something that's worth trust. How can you have an idea of how to build trust? Not the design, but the way of conducting our project.
Right. So I think I addressed many of them in the deck, but the one I would point out specifically is that things that are invisible do not really trust. So there's a lot to be said for visibility. If you make it obvious to the user what it is you're doing, either stating explicitly if you're going to do this, or giving feedback when they're doing something so it's very, very clear what's going on, that's going to be a whole lot more trustworthy than if we take it for granted and we don't really say those things. Visibility earns trust, and visibility comes. So that would be the first thing I would look for, and I'm willing to bet that in your situation, you probably have that, where users just don't know what to do yet. So just making it obvious is going to be very, very important. Does that sound good? Okay. All right.
We have time for questions. A little time, so
You want to work?
Everyone wants to be good.
Okay, 10 more minutes.
Okay, so my question is related to software. Suppose that you create a software. Of course, software is sometimes it's wrong. You will have bugs. Of course, all the time you will have bugs. So the users say to you, okay, I pressed these two buttons and the application crashed or whatever. So you lost confidence. The user confidence, lost confidence in yourself. Is there any technique that when you launch the fix, the patch, the update for that software that you can apply and say, please trust again with this software, no problems. Fix the problem, it's not going to happen again. Like that.
So the exact design that you suggested, it would be a little unusual. But very often when we do have a patch, a new release, update, part of that process is to explain what it's doing. So I would certainly, again, be very visible in terms of what it is trying to fix, and be very, very clear that, hey, we know there's a problem with stability or whatever, and put that at the top so that people see. And I think that will, you don't have to say, hey, trust us this time, but making those improvements more obvious, I think will help.
Mine is like that, but sometimes the system, it's part of the system is to fail. I mean, when I was working in a travel agency, online travel agency, I remember that we had a problem that when we book a ticket and the user presses OK and confirms the booking, actually it's sending an application for the server. And maybe in the meantime, that process will fail. And sometimes we had to give bad news for this. I mean, your application failed. I couldn't book your ticket right now, but we are dealing with it. Yes. And I remember in the user testing that there was no way to write a message that will give some satisfaction for the user. The user was always answering.
Okay.
I wanted some advice.
Okay. I don't really know how to address that specific issue of running an error message in this case. Again, kind of recognizing the problem I think will work. But the one thing I would like to do, I did talk about forgiveness. And so one situation that really bothers me as a user is when your service fails, gives me an error message, and I have to start completely over. So at least if you were to say, okay, we've got a problem or whatever, try again later, and I don't have to start completely over, the thing that I did is saved, at least as a user, I feel a whole lot better about it. Whereas if by contrast I get an error message, I go back to the home screen and I have to start completely over and do everything again, that's the last thing that's going to do. So if you have a situation where this happens, I would really like to encourage you to design that so that you keep track and don't start. And so maybe I'm not throwing the error message, but at least when I go back and look through that.
I'm sorry, I think what you meant is something different.
Okay.
I was there. You were just at a user test meant that user is looking at ticket. So there are three possible endings. Okay, you have your ticket. No more things to do. Oh, we can't process your ticket because the server is down and you've lost everything you managed. And it says, we have your data. You almost have your money, and you have to wait to see if we can get your ticket or not.
Yeah.
And there was no way to say this in a way that gave any satisfaction because the user had their money compromised. They didn't know if it was going to be charged from the credit card or not, and it was not in their power to revert it.
Okay.
So it's a very difficult situation, and
right.
I think it's a great question.
Okay. You got it.
Sorry that we're turning this.
Well, maybe we should actually.
Maybe that was a problem.
I think it's about time to wrap up. Because I have two more things to do.
Okay.
Yeah, after that. Okay, so. Okay, one more.
Sorry, it's gonna be like a space policy question, but I was thinking about the Internet of Things and how everything seems to be controlled right now by a smartphone and applications there. But when we get to a point that devices are going to get smarter and we will need to trust their processing and something is going to require a lot.
Right.
I was thinking also at the same time, how do we build trust around the person that we've just met, where we decide in a few seconds whether we're going to trust that person or not. And so how do you imagine and how do you picture UIs in the next 10 years? Do you think they're going to be more humanized or going to contain some of the things that we use from perception, the things that we use from non-verbal communication to decide whether we trust people?
Yeah.
It's like a question.
Yeah, so I haven't put too much thought into the Internet of Things, to be honest, but you know, I'm going to do a workshop tomorrow where I basically try to think that UI is basically a form of human conversation, right? So what I would recommend is, you know, the taking the trust for granted part is where we have a mechanical solution. You know, we need this information from you, you submit the form, we do it, and we don't do anything to build your confidence that we're going to do the right thing. So the human conversation would address like issues like, is this safe to do? What do we need to do? And how do we set this up in a secure way? Is it secure? What do you need to make sure that it behaves the way you expect it to behave? That should be explicitly part of the experience rather than taken for granted. So what I would think a good solution would be to think about that human conversation. What would you talk to the user in person, and make sure that those elements where those issues of trust or confidence, those are addressed in the UI somewhere. That's what I do. I don't know where it would lead, but it's more human, less mechanical. Yes. All right. So we have a tough decision to make. So we have to decide who has the best impression.
Thank you all for your very good questions. Do I have to decide?
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Let the public decide.
Let the public decide, yeah. That would be a good one.
All right.
Okay. But we need to make a...
Well, I could ask you again.
Okay. Let's do that.
I'm going to go to a random slide. I'm going to ask a question based on these things. Okay. What is Everett's law of trust? Who knows? Everett's law of trust.
Trust is
What is?
So, you were so close, but the gentleman in the background first. So that was it. So it is. It's hard to earn, easy to lose.
and very difficult to regain.
Okay, muy bien.
Do you have a